What's going on? My name's Mark, aka Sauce Stache, and on today's episode of Eat Kindly with me, we're gonna be making some seriously awesome jackfruit barbecue ribs. So on Sauce Stache, I spend my time recreating meats and cheeses. I make a lot of plant-based foods. I try to take the path of doing it scientifically, doing what some of the big plant-based meat creators are doing in the industry, and figuring out how we could do that at home. So let's get moving. Let me show you how to make these jackfruit ribs. Okay, so before we get our grill rolling, we gotta make our jackfruit rib meat. We're just gonna be starting with 1 can of young green jackfruit in brine. That is the jackfruit that makes things meaty. So all we're gonna do is just open and drain the jackfruit, and while we're draining the jackfruit, we're just gonna rinse it off with some cold water in the sink. I'm just gonna be pressing and mashing the hard ends. We kinda wanna break the jackfruit up and kinda soften up the hard bits that are in the jackfruit. We're also gonna wanna press out as many seeds as we can get. Okay, so now that our jackfruit is washed and pressed down, all the hard bits are softened, we're gonna be throwing these into a saucepan or pot with about 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 cup of vegetable stock, and then we're just gonna use some cold water to kind of cover up the jackfruit the rest of the way. And then all we need to do is just bring this up to a boil and then simmer for about 20 minutes. This is gonna soften them up and get them flavored up, kind of like meat. Okay, so while our jackfruit's boiling, I'm gonna prep the rest of the ingredients in the bowl of a stand mixer. Now, if you don't have a stand mixer, you could totally do this by hand. It's just gonna come together a little bit easier in a stand mixer. So I'm gonna start with 1 cup of vital wheat gluten, 2 tablespoons pea protein powder. Now the vital wheat gluten is essentially what's going to bind this all together, while the jackfruit is what gives it its fibrous, kind of like meat-like texture. The pea protein is what works in between the two. It's gonna add a little bit more bite and bounce to the gluten, which makes it more like ribs. Now for flavorings, I'm gonna start with 1 tablespoon of mushroom seasoning. You find this a lot in like Asian markets. It's just called mushroom seasoning. It packs a super umami punch. We're gonna do a teaspoon onion powder, teaspoon garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika, and a teaspoon cumin. Now I'm just gonna quickly just mix these dry ingredients together before I add the jackfruit, just to make sure it's more of a homogeneous mixture. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes. We're gonna carefully drain the jackfruit through a colander into like a heat-safe container. We wanna save that liquid because we're gonna be using that liquid as our main broth for this mixture. So at this point, add the jackfruit to the dry mixture. We're gonna turn this onto a low mix and allow those dry ingredients to kind of mix up with the jackfruit. That jackfruit's getting shredded up. It really looks like meat. It's really wild. Now, I have about 1 cup of broth left. That all might vary based on the size of your saucepan, but we don't want to use much more than 1 cup of liquid. So let's just add a little bit at a time while this is still kind of mixing. It should really kind of start coming together now. Now, at this point, it's kind of like mixed together. This was only just mixed for a few minutes, but it's a pretty solid, meaty mixture you can see here. So I wanna add some kind of like fat pockets to this. I want this to have like a little bit of like different textures to it. So we're gonna add a tablespoon of tapioca starch. And then I also want these ribs to have just a little bit of a kick. So we're just gonna add 1 teaspoon of chili oil. Now all we're gonna do is just lock this down, put this on like a 2 or 3, and let it knead for about 10 minutes or so. We really want those gluten strands to really incorporate and bind together. If you're doing this by hand, just pull it out of your mixer and start kneading by hand. Get that arm workout going. Knead for 10-15 minutes. Okay, so this has been kneading. It's pretty much all came together. You can tell when you pull it apart that you see like the small individual strands of like the jackfruit and the small strands of gluten. At this point, it's just all bunched up in little balls and segments, but we just need to work this together into one piece to make it kind of like our rib. So all we're gonna do is just pour this onto our work surface. It doesn't have to be floured or anything. Now I'm just flattening this out to be about the same width as my hand, probably 21 inches long or so, and then maybe 4 inches wide. At this point, we're gonna add some rib bones, except for our rib bones, we're gonna be using lemongrass. You can find these sometimes at Whole Foods. You can find them at different markets and things like that. But I think they're gonna work really great for bones. So I'm just gonna slice them to be about the same width, just so they stick out just a little bit on each side. So we want a rib bone every few inches, just like you would with regular ribs. And then we're gonna fold it over on top of itself. And then this is our rack of ribs right here. I mean, this looks awesome. All I'm gonna do is just kind of wrap this loosely in parchment paper, but I want this to rest for at least an hour or so. I think the longer you let it rest, the more those gluten strands are gonna relax down, and it's also just gonna kind of help all of this kind of work itself together. Okay, so the ribs are chilling, but before we throw them on the grill, let's make a dry rub. Now the dry rub is gonna be like the base seasoning that gets grilled into our jackfruit ribs, and it's gonna be like a lot of the flavor that happens before the barbecue sauce. So I'm gonna start with 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, then 2 teaspoons kosher salt, 2 teaspoons black pepper, teaspoon garlic powder, teaspoon onion powder, teaspoon dried mustard, half teaspoon smoked paprika, half teaspoon cumin, half teaspoon cayenne pepper. Then we're just going to give this a little mix and kind of break up that brown sugar, make sure that it's mixed and sticking to all of the other seasonings. This looks awesome, and I bet you it tastes even more awesome. That's perfect. Now all we need is our rack of ribs, which these are just looking phenomenal. Oh, they feel perfect. Let's give these a healthy dose of this seasoning and make sure that it's nice and pressed in, and don't be shy with it. I'm so excited about this. Now let's get our barbecue grill ready. I'm gonna fill the grill up only on 1/2 of the grill, and then on the other half of the grill, I'm gonna use this metal tray. But I'm gonna fill the metal tray up with water. I want the charcoal to kind of sit around the metal tray and steam. That's gonna give us a lot of like moisture within the grill. I like grilling at night. Monica and I eat a little bit late. In Florida, you have to grill once the sun starts to set. Luckily, the temperature's gone down. It's only 90 degrees right now, but let's get this on the grill. Okay, so I like to use like a wood lump charcoal. This is what's gonna give it a really nice flavor. You can get the regular charcoal like bricks and then throw some like wood chunks on top. That'll give you like a really nice smoky flavor. Anything you could do to just add that smokiness. So I'm gonna throw the water pan in the grill. I'm gonna get the charcoal started in the chimney, and then we're gonna start grilling. Okay, so the charcoal is white hot. This is ready to roll. Grill top off. Then all we're gonna do is just dump the charcoal in right next to our water. There we go. So at this point, we just have to close up the grill, let it heat up for a few minutes, maybe another 10 minutes or so, and then we're gonna throw these ribs on the grill. We're gonna throw it on the cool side. We're gonna throw it above the water pan. So after 30 minutes, we're gonna flip it over. Make sure you keep it on the cool side. Don't put it onto the hot side over the charcoal. Let it go for about another 30 minutes and then flip it onto the hot side. You just wanna give it some grill marks, flip it over again, and then you should have those grill marks. Now at this point, all we're gonna do is give it some barbecue sauce. So I just have a really simple barbecue sauce and ketchup mixture. We're gonna baste that on both sides. Give it about another 5 or 10 minutes on the grill. We don't need to go that much longer per side. Okay, got you a napkin because we're about to eat some ribs. Look at these. The lemongrass as the rib bone is kind of wild.
Yeah, that was a great idea. That's perfect.
Yeah, that pretty wild. Okay, so go ahead, baby. Like, pick up your rib. Look at the rib meat. It looks like.
Yeah, this is awesome.
It looks like rib meat. Okay. Cheers, jackfruit ribs.
This is awesome.
It was really freaking good. It's pretty unbelievable. I mean,
This looks like a bone.
it really does look like a bone. I am super happy about these.
I love the flavor too, and
Yeah.
I like how you kind of gave it a little bit of spice.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a kick to it.
Really good.
So that's it, fall off the bone jackfruit ribs. Are you gonna make it? What do you make on the grill normally? Actually, leave some comments down below because I would love to know some ideas of what you cook on the grill. Are you doing seitan? Are you doing jackfruit? What's your favorite thing? I always want some new ideas. Thanks to Live Kindly for having me on today's episode of Eat Kindly with me. This has been a blast. I'm so glad I got to experiment with this recipe. And I mean, I know what I'm gonna be making a heck of a lot more often now. So good.